Thanks to everybody for joining. This is actually only our second webinar after selling for about 8 months. So we realized we need to be a little bit more communicative about what we're doing. A recent press release that we put out about a very special customer satisfaction guarantee gives us the opportunity to do that and reconnect with you all. So thanks everyone for joining. This is Jeff. This is a picture of Jeff, and I'm Jeff on the phone. VP of Products at Vast. I've been here since 2016, and I will be your host for today's discussion. What we wanted to do was to give an update on really two things. The first was a little bit of a catch up on our business performance. As I mentioned, we've been somewhat quiet since February, so it would be good for you all to understand a little bit about what's going on. And then following that, what we'll do is we'll dive right into this new guarantee that we made that we think is pretty special. So everyone in the Zoom utility has a section for Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. We'll be sure to get to all of those questions by the end of the session. So write them in as you think them, and we'll catch them as we get to the end. Okay, so just to recap, what is Vast trying to do? Well, in addition to taking over or waking up every morning and trying to rule the world, what we're really trying to do is to simplify the data center, to simplify the application experience for very data-intensive applications. We've created a concept that we call universal storage, a storage architecture that combines the performance of an all-flash array and has kind of reworked the economics of all-flash such that it's now affordable enough to put all of your data on. And the net result of that is that when you can have a system that's big enough to hold all of your data and scalable enough such that it can support the needs of all your applications, fast enough such that it's as fast as your tier 1 storage, and affordable enough such that you can now afford to put all of your data on it, then things get dramatically different. We call this concept universal storage. You can use it for everything from your transactional applications all the way down to the archive. Not only from an operations perspective is it simpler, but one of the questions that we love to ask customers is, what else would you do with your data when all of it was available at your fingertips? And not every customer knows the answer to that question when we ask them, but what they do know is that they don't want to be constrained by the limitations of the infrastructure that they're buying today. So as you can imagine, it's a very exciting time for Vast Data because we uniquely have this value proposition to share. The use cases are settling in as we continue to sell. So we have both vertical use cases in everything from life sciences to finance, quantitative trading and hedge fund analytics, content production, content delivery, content distribution. High performance computing seems to be a great use case for us. And then we also have these horizontal use cases that cut across a lot of different markets, everything from big data and AI to secondary storage. We make a terrific product for data protection and backup. As we start to get an appreciation for the performance capabilities of the product and the simplicity of deployment, we're now targeting more enterprise infrastructure as the next extension to the universal storage story, one platform for all of your data center data, as part of what we're doing towards the end of this year and beginning of next year. So we're really trying to make something special, something that can apply to all of your infrastructure, all of your applications, and we're well underway. So, oops, we had some compression issues here. Just a quick recap, we were founded in 2016. We released our first alpha product in 2017 and refined that through an alpha and a beta process. We released a GA product at the end of last year, and we announced the company in very early 2019, around February. We also announced that we've got $80 million of venture capital. The overwhelming majority of that we haven't spent yet. So we're trying to build a very conservative business, but at the same time, really redefining how products are brought to market and redefining the focus on how we can really deliver something special for customers. And the result of that is that the product has record-breaking product adoption. Vast is the fastest growing infrastructure company in IT history. We've got customers that have signed up for many $1 million first system investments. We'll be making more announcements on this topic, and as well as on some new software updates that we're happy to announce later this summer. But this one is a record breaker by every measure. We're selling more in our first half of year of operation than some companies have sold. Some of the most successful companies have sold in many years of their business combined. So it feels really good. Customers are responding great to the story. And here's just a quick example of one of those. This is a little picture that we threw onto Twitter the other day. What we did is we shipped just around a 3 petabyte system to a financial services customer. A lot of flash, a lot of Optane, and of course a lot of cores to power a distributed storage system. This is a customer that's consolidating all sorts of different types of platforms into one scalable all-flash system that can simplify their both their operational and their application experience while just making everything faster. If you catch us on Twitter, you can see evidence of us shipping systems to all sorts of different customers around the world. We just recently mentioned an auto company that we shipped infrastructure for some deep learning projects that they're working on, government labs that are doing bioinformatics, research universities that are using us for a lot of different diverse requirements, everything from research applications to enterprise IT. And then we're starting to ship into content houses that are finding actually really amazing data reduction gains from our next generation approach to data reduction, which helps them rethink the economics of flash altogether. So follow us on Twitter at @vast_data if you'd like to see some of the places that we're shipping systems to in the future, and of course to engage in some of the topics that we're talking about. Okay, so one of those topics is our zero compromise guarantee. Zero compromises is the promise for customers. What we wanted to do was to really change the entire equation about how people think about adopting new technologies. Up until now, what you've had is this behavior in the market where a company will enter into the market and introduce a new technology, and the risk profile for that acquisition usually stops customers from being able to kind of ride the leading edge of technology. And what we've realized is that because of the resilience that we've built into our architecture and some of the innovative capabilities that we've built into the architecture, what this allows us to do is to completely transform how customers think about new product adoption and take all of the risk out of that equation. And we have decided on a little bit of a mascot for this program. I'd like you all to say hello to the tardigrade. This is not an entirely well-known animal that is microscopic. Some people refer to it as the water bear. When we started thinking about this guarantee, what we did is we just went onto Google and we researched what is the world's most resilient animal. And it has to be said that this little guy is absolutely that. So it's a microscopic organism that can survive some of the most extreme conditions in the world. It can live in temperatures ranging from -300 degrees to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, well beyond boiling point. It can withstand extreme radiation. You can put it out into space and face it right at the sun, and this little guy won't die. You can starve it from both food and water for 10 years, and it still won't die. So why do we adopt this as our mascot? Well, what we think is that it's the most appropriate kind of focal point to draw a comparison to our DAYS architecture, our disaggregated shared everything architecture, which we believe to be the most resilient storage system in the world that can only be represented by the most resilient living animal in the world. So what is this guarantee that we're bringing to market this summer? Well, essentially, you can think of this as just a hard coding of a lot of the commitments that we've already been making to some of our early adopter customers. Commitments that we're entirely fine to make because of such a low risk profile that is created for VAST by the capabilities of this architecture. And so what we think comes out of that is the industry's most comprehensive and strongest guarantee for storage acquisition and long-term storage ownership that any company has ever introduced. The first of which is guaranteed data persistence, guaranteed against data loss, as well as guaranteed system uptime. The second thing that we've announced is that customers get all-inclusive access to our software for the totality of their system and ownership and maintenance period. We guarantee not only that QLC drives will live for 10 years when other companies can't even think about shipping this type of flash. We also guarantee that we will fix the maintenance prices throughout that 10-year engagement, which is completely counterintuitive to how big storage companies like to fleece their customers after a 4 or 5 year period. We guarantee that you get a dedicated technical account manager we call a shadow support engineer for at least the first 6 months of your deployment for free. We guarantee that our data reduction approach is far superior to everything else that is in the market, and we'll pay you in free storage if we don't live up to that. And we guarantee that for any reason, up to 60 days of the receipt of the system, you can return it for any reason. So let's dig into these a little bit. The first of which is our zero data loss, zero downtime guarantee. And this is really a byproduct of a lot of the innovation that we put into this new architecture. Innovation that's possible by the combination, it's made possible by the combination of QLC flash, 3D crosspoint storage class memory, and this new distributed system fabric that we call NVMe over Fabrics. And so that starts with our DAYS architecture, our disaggregated shared everything architecture, consisting of a bunch of servers that are loosely coupled with each other, distributed across the NVMe fabric, and they're all completely stateless. So there is no storage in these servers. All the storage is held in highly available vast enclosures. These servers don't need to talk to each other in the synchronous write of read path. There's no cache in them. There's no cache coherency code in the system. And the nice thing about the shared everything approach is that every single server can see every amount of data in the cluster. So when we looked at the guarantee, what we realized is that for basically a cluster of any size, even if you had hundreds of file servers in your network, as long as you have just one of those remaining during a system failure or multiple system failures, the system will remain completely online and users can always get to their data. This is something that's never been possible with controller-based architectures or shared nothing systems, where when you start to lose multiple nodes, you lose access to your data at a minimum. In shared nothing clusters, you could potentially lose all of your data. We're guaranteeing complete uptime in the face of server failures as long as you just have one online. And if we fail that guarantee, then you get 1 year of support for free. On top of it, we've solved for one of the most problematic parts of systems architectures and made our lives easier by getting rid of volatility altogether in the system. There is zero memory or zero DRAM in the write path of our system. And so we're guaranteeing that we will never write to memory. We will never write to a volatile media store. And the result of that is that we never have to worry about power outages or destaging our caches, because every write is an atomic persistent write. So the system is guaranteed to never write to volatile media so long as you own it. And that's in our user agreement now. One of the other guarantees, I think I missed this in our summary, is that we guarantee that you get access to all of our software throughout the totality of your system deployment. As long as you have an active maintenance agreement, we're never going to nickel and dime you for new features like a lot of the big storage companies do. When you buy a VAS system, you get everything that we've made today, and you get everything that we'll make in the future for our VAST OS operating system, all of the software releases and features, as long as you have an active maintenance agreement. So now you don't have to worry about us inventing something cool, which we are doing and we are working on in the back room. You don't have to worry about what it's going to cost to adopt these new features in the future, because you're completely protected by our all-inclusive, all-access guarantee. This is actually a pretty big topic as we start to get into larger and larger customer opportunities, the one about how we can ensure the endurance of very low endurance drives for up to a decade. And so that gives us an opportunity to talk about some of the innovation that VAST has built into its global QLC flash translation software. We spend all of our time thinking about ways to get a supernaturally high level of endurance out of very low endurance commodity and hyperscale media. Our architecture can get up to 100 times more endurance from these drives than legacy systems can. And that allows us to field these systems for well over a decade, even though we're using the low endurance QLC flash that you can buy in the marketplace today. All of this is very easy to implement as well as easy to maintain thanks to our asymmetric cluster architecture. As you add more resources into a cluster, we wear level all of your writes across all of the new resources. You don't have to pool your data into specific pools of storage that have to be upgraded all at the same time. All of that goes away with our disaggregated shared everything asymmetric cluster design. We couple this with a 10-year guarantee around fixed price maintenance. What we have the benefit of is because the system doesn't have any mechanical media in it, what happens is it doesn't fail in the same ways that legacy storage architectures, legacy archive and hard disk-based storage systems were intended to do. And so the result of that is that our customers get superior investment protection. And we couple that with the fact that we don't gouge our customers as the system starts to age. What you pay in your first year of support or what you pay in your first few years of support is exactly what you'll pay for the subsequent years up to 10, and that's guaranteed. So there are no surprises as your system starts to age. You'll know exactly what it costs to renew your support, so long as you ever want to keep it on the floor, and you're never going to apply upcharges. Okay, so this one for me and personally is really exciting. We have been shipping our systems. We've been shipping our probe, which is our data reduction estimation utility, out to customers around the world. And what we have seen time and time again is that our new next generation similarity-based data reduction architecture allows us to deliver and help customers realize far superior data reduction as compared to any other systems architecture that they can deploy today. So some of these customers are coming from a place where the systems that they use today aren't reducing data at all, and they're delighted by the fact that their structured data, their unstructured data, and in certain cases, even their backup data can be more reduced than what they've experienced in the past. And then other customers have systems that have data reduction. They put our technology on the floor, and they realize that there's so much more to gain by our approach that takes essentially a global view of your namespace, but our pattern matching goes all the way down to byte granularity. If you want more information on this, I suggest you go to the Vast Data blog and read a little bit more from Howard about how we've changed the game in terms of data reduction. But what we're saying is part of this guarantee is you can bring us any system, any backup appliance, any scale-out NAS system, any object storage system, any software-defined whatever, we don't care. And so long as you can demonstrate to us that you get better data reduction with that system at the physical level than what we would store for unencrypted data, we will pay up the difference in free storage without asking any more questions. So this for us is a way to socialize the fact that what we've done is truly game-changing with respect to data reduction, and we're happy to put our money where our mouth is. Okay, so the next one is essentially a safety blanket that we give to customers that essentially says, for the first 6 months of deployment, we're going to shadow you, and we're going to make sure that there are no questions, there's no hesitation, there's no confusion around how to deploy and manage our system. And so we call these this program our Shadow Support Program. And essentially what it is a dedicated technical account manager that works with you to make sure every day that your system's online, it's operational, it's working fine, and there are no surprises in terms of how to operate it. So we can, of course, see all of the activities that are happening with our systems when customers allow us to call home to the Vast managed cloud service. You can log issues into your portal, and your Shadow Support Engineer will be following that. You can Slack us, you can text us, you can email us, you can call us. You can even do smoke signals if you can figure out a way to do that. Your Shadow Support Engineer is there to make sure every day when they wake up that you're enjoying the best possible Vast experience, and that's guaranteed. Okay, not the best image of a receipt, but this is the best we can do in the time that we had. If all else fails, if for any reason, even if you don't even like the looks of the system, you can return your Vast system within the first 60 days of receiving it without answering any questions. There's no fine print. There's no considerations here. For 60 days, you have a guaranteed full money back right to return. And this is something that we've been offering to customers since we started. We haven't had to give up that right to return because the customers have been happy, but know that you're completely protected from perspective of your investment because there is no risk anymore thanks to this right to return. Okay, so that's really the story that we have for you today. Zero risk, all reward, no compromises. VAST has really cracked the code to adopting innovative technology. We want our customers to be pioneers. We want our customers to not be afraid to push the technology envelope in the spirit of making their organization's lives better, both from an operational and making their applications run better. And this is customer certainty that we can provide because of the game-changing innovation that we built into our platform. So if you want to read the specific terms of the agreement, you can just go on to vastdata.com. At the bottom of the page, you can find a link to our terms and conditions, and we've got the details on the guarantee right there. So that is all we have to say. I'm going to check the Q&A and see if there's any questions that anyone has. Okay. Sure. Okay, so the first one is, sorry, maybe I missed it a little bit earlier, Andre, but I'll get to it now. So can we describe some of the HPC use cases that VAST is used for? Yeah, these are pretty varied. So, so there's kind of a broad brush that I would say is that, you know, not to oversimplify the problem, but government HPC seems like a pretty ripe market for us. So we have a few deployments going on where customers are using our products for everything from high energy physics to geophysical exploration to weather to astronomy and health and life sciences, as well as intelligence. So that's not something that we typically talk about because there's only a few of those customers in the world, but a lot of those are using HPC for intel purposes. Now, if I look a little bit more broadly, what we find is a lot of our commercial customers also talk about what they do in terms of HPC. So that could be everything from pharmaceutical companies to actually hedge funds. When they talk about what they're doing, typically they speak in HPC terms, to oil and gas research, to AI. So most of the deep learning practices that we find in either the web companies, the life science, or the automotive companies we're working with, when they're building large GPU clusters, they tend to label them with an HPC badge as well. Okay. So the second question is, how many D nodes can one afford to lose before data becomes available? And that answer is a function of the size of the system. So for small systems, you can lose, well, I should say for one enclosure, you can lose one D node before the system's data is unavailable. No, I should say you have to lose two before the data goes available. There are two I/O modules, we call these D nodes, in the back of an enclosure, and that's the number you can lose. Well, as I mentioned, you can lose one and your system's still online. If you lose two, it becomes unavailable. Now, as the cluster grows, you can lose any number of D nodes, multiple D nodes. As long as you have one online in each enclosure, then you're protected. And once you get to a certain cluster size, then our erasure codes basically protect against full enclosure failures, at which point you can lose all of the D nodes in an enclosure and still be online. Hope that was clear. Okay. All flash arrays with the NVMe over fabrics and response times of 100 microseconds are emerging at a rapid pace. They're very expensive compared to what VAST is offering. What latitude do we have to increase Optane to improve latency characteristics, and how do we order it? Okay, so that's an interesting question. So we have these stickers that we keep on our laptop called that just say "Vast enough." And what we found when we started the company was that there are a lot of technology companies in the marketplace that brought to market extremely low latency flash systems at a very expensive costs. And as we started to explore the use cases in the market and the different type of applications that are consuming flash, what we've rarely found are applications that need true 100 microsecond latency. So all of the things that we do within our system are intended on reworking flash economics such that you can afford flash for pretty much everything. What we haven't encountered yet is a customer that needs 100 microsecond latencies, but we do very often talk to customers that need sub-millisecond latencies. So, so what we offer today is a system that writes at about 1 millisecond if you're talking about a random 4K write. It can read at anywhere between 500 microseconds to 1 millisecond. And our objective is not to be the absolute lowest latency system in the marketplace. We think there's a very limited market for it. Our objective is to basically build one storage system for pretty much everything. Now, if there's a tier 0 market for very low latency flash, we haven't yet seen it, but we'd be entirely happy with forfeiting that opportunity because what we're doing and all the things that we add to the data path that add a little bit of latency consequently are equally used to drive down the cost of the cluster by driving up very, very high levels of efficiency. So that's our answer there. We probably will never be at 100 microseconds, and we're entirely okay with that. Okay, so next question. What was the tool that we mentioned that looked at the data and calculated the data reduction expectation? Okay, so that's called the probe. It's a very simple term that we use. It's a little bit space themed, but this is essentially a VM that we deploy in customer environments. It's got a couple SSDs that you need to attach to it to create a big hash index that we maintain. And this probe essentially reads through all of the data that you want us to look at. And what comes out of that probing exercise is a number that we would expect to get with our customers, a data reduction number that you'll see in operation. So the VAST probe can be deployed in a matter of a few minutes, as long as you have a VM and some SSDs, and you can be off to the races figuring out what your actual data reduction rate will be. Okay, so the last question, are operating system upgrades non-disruptive? Absolutely. So one of the nice things about building our architecture with stateless VAST containers is that updates can flow across the cluster non-disruptively in a very simple fashion. So the VAST servers, sometimes known as C nodes, will run these containers, and we assign a bunch of virtual IP addresses to those containers while they're in operation. When the system does a non-disruptive upgrade, what happens is that we start to essentially roll the upgrade across the cluster. We support N+2 and N-2 upgrade capability in terms of software versions. And we just move the virtual IP addresses to the remaining servers when we take one of the servers offline to update its code. So because each of our clusters is a minimum of 4 servers, the maximum amount of performance loss that you see at that time is typically no more than 25%. But if you had a cluster of ours with 100 servers, you'd see a 1% performance loss while we're upgrading the system. So hopefully that answered that question. I think it did. Okay, rapid fire Q&A. Any other questions? Okay, well, great. Well, let me first thank everybody for your time today. I know you're all busy, and appreciate you making the investment and understanding a little bit more about what we're doing. We're so happy to have all of these early adopter customers, and appreciate all of our channel partner and customer support. And if you have any other questions, just go to vastdata.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday. Have a great summer if we don't talk to you in the next couple of weeks, and call us if you need anything. Cheers.